and we will begin with La Liga's title race right now, where Barcelona took top spot at the weekend after beating Atletico Madrid. This has been the reaction in Spain across all of the papers, talking about the blow that Barcelona have delivered and the reaction from Barcelona in taking top spot here. But here's what Atleti manager Diego Simeone has had to say about Barcelona after the game on Sunday, as we take a look at the table and how things stand right now.
Ya lo dije anteriormente, es el equipo que mejor juega, el que compatibiliza asociativamente el mejor fútbol como equipo, y aparte tiene grandes individualidades y obviamente puede hacer goles individualmente por su jerarquía individual, por centro, porque lo han hecho no sé cuánto llevan, un montón de cantidad de goles lleva el Barcelona y la mitad habrá sido de centros. Así que no creo que hoy haya sido la excepción.
Taking a look at Barcelona in 2025, 18 games so far, 15 wins, 3 draws, and not a single loss in that time. 60 goals scored, 19 goals conceded, 8 clean sheets. And when it comes to games with goals where there's been 4 or more goals in a game, it is 10 as it stands right now. And that is just in this calendar year, as we welcome in our Madrid correspondent, Alex Kirkland. So this is what we're looking at with Barcelona right now, Alex. We're seeing where they are in the table. They're favourites to win La Liga and they're favourites in the Champions League too. And then we're hearing glowing praise from Diego Simeone, saying they're best in all departments right now too.
Yeah, it's looking good right now for Barca. A potential treble, of course, with La Liga, Champions League and the Copa del Rey. Of course, in terms of the title race, it's not over yet. Look, this was a significant result. Of course it was. But I don't think it's a decisive result. The gap at the top of the table is only 4 points. Yes, Barcelona have that game in hand. We don't know yet when that game will be played, the postponed Osasuna game. A bit of a debate around that at the moment. And of course, we don't know that Barca will win that game in hand when eventually is played. And if there's one thing we've seen throughout the season, it's that all of these 3 teams in the title race, Barca, Madrid and Atleti, are capable of dropping points at any time. But no question, Simeone says it. I think pretty much everyone agrees Barcelona have been the most consistently impressive team throughout the season. Certainly in 2025, as you point out, the kind of this amazing run that they're on. And it was really demonstrated by the way that they got out of a very difficult situation against Atletico at the weekend, going 2-0 down, fighting back to win 4-2. A pretty, historic result. I think it had been years and years and years, decades, since Atletico had given up a 2-0 lead at home in that way. So yeah, a significant result, a really positive one for Barca, a really, really disappointing one for Atleti, especially coming off the back of their disappointment in the Champions League as well. But I don't think this title race is over yet, especially when you think we've got some big games to come, notably, of course, El Clasico in May.
Because this is what you brought up yesterday, Craig, obviously, how long they can continue playing with this high line, which so far is serving them. When you take a look at the goals scored, their goal difference is far superior to Real Madrid, who are the closest behind them. They're not conceding too many. So where might it trip them up if they're already getting over the line in the more difficult encounters they've had?
Well, we saw a little period before Christmas, before the winter break, where they hit the buffers and they lost a bit of form, and they went into the winter break and came out of it, I think, in 3rd place in the league, or certainly trailing, not on top. And as Alex said, the form has been very good since the turn of the year, and that's hence the back to the top of the league. But we've already seen a little glimpse of how things can change very quickly. And Hansi Flick won't have to remind these players that they were flying along, and then all of a sudden the form dipped, the results changed, and Real Madrid and Atleti went above them. So, as Alex said, there is an awful long way to go. But yeah, they are the best team to watch at the moment. They do look the most dangerous going forward. But I don't care what the stats say in terms of goals scored or goals against or whatever. They will give you chances. And, let's not forget, we can talk about great comebacks all we want. The Copa del Rey, they were 2-0 down against Atleti early. The game the other night, they were 2-0 down in this game and had to fight their way back. That's difficult to do that all the time. Usually when you find yourself 2-0 down, the best you're going to do is come back and get a point. So there's a lot of water to go under this bridge. They're in good form, but it's all in my opinion, they will give you chances.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got something to say?
No, that's the one thing that's going to trip them up, because clearly going forward, they've had all the answers. Simeone's told you all you need to know, so that really isn't a problem. I think we all know that they're going to be a handful for anybody. But the problem with the defensive line is it involves 4 players. That's the problem. And it just takes one, like it did, I think it was Martinez against Atleti the weekend, fell asleep, dropped back, everybody else stepped up, and all of a sudden they're behind. Now, the fact that they couldn't respond because of the extra time and penalties in midweek means that they kind of got away with it being 2-0 down. But they just can't afford to not concentrate at the back, because that's the one thing that will catch up with them.
It was Martinez for the Nicol Martinez for the second goal. It was Jules Koundé for the first goal, who he didn't play for offside. He went out to win a header that he was never going to win. The big question we have, I think, when it gets to the crunch in the Champions League, Copa del Rey, and obviously the league, is that going to be the one area that is going to cost them the points that take them to the top of the league at the end of the season? And that is the big question, I think, still, because Hansi Flick has shown he's played his cards. They ain't changing. They are not going to all of a sudden start dropping off. It's come hell or high water, they're going to play this sort of line and squeeze out. And only at the end of the season we'll figure out whether that's been the right strategy or not.
Absolutely. Well, let's get word from Hansi Flick, given that we have heard from Diego Simeone. Here's Hansi Flick after Barca's victory.
What do you feel most proud of this team?
I think it's when you see we played in Atletico, away match, and I think we had a lot of ball possession. We do it also in the first half really good. I know we had some chances, but we didn't score in the first half, and of course we made some mistakes. Okay, that then offers them to score goals, but at the end it's like that. How the team comes back, how they believe, also in the style, how we play football. This is a really good thing, and yeah. About the whole team, about the staff, I'm proud about that, because I think we have a really good atmosphere in the team, in the dressing room, but also around. We are one club, or everyone is together like a family, and this means a lot to me, because I think it's unbelievable what you feel as a coach. And when I arrived here, and now at the moment, it's really fantastic, and I love it to work for this club, and it's really fantastic to see also the guys around, the staff, but also the players, how they are connected with each other, and it's a really good thing.
We'll go back to Alex after hearing from Hansi Flick there, because obviously we're already in mid-March now, Alex. There's not long to go. Yes, as Craig's saying, there's some big games coming up right now, but there's got to be a feeling among many of the Barca fans who seem to be defending this style now. And then there are the doubters, obviously, because they've seen where it can catch them out. There's that balance that we're looking for at the moment with Barcelona.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the fan base here, and maybe around the world as well, I think overall the feeling is overwhelmingly positive. I think the way that Flick has transformed this team has been really quite amazing. Yes, especially in attack, because what they're doing offensively in terms of the numbers is truly remarkable in terms of how many goals they're scoring. But look, overall, this style, this high-risk style, is working. It's paying off. Look where they are. Yes, there are risks involved, but there's risks involved to any way that you play. There's risks involved to being overly conservative as well. In terms of Flick, I was in his press conference after the game at the weekend, and I was really struck by how kind of calm he was, how down to earth he was. There was not the slightest suggestion of euphoria, as there had been, I think, from some of the Barca players in their celebrations after the third and fourth goals. They were going wild out there on the pitch, and rightly so. But Flick was very, very calm. Of course, he's a vastly experienced coach. He's been there at the highest level. He knows there's a long way to go. But he must also know that this result was a big step. And like I say, I think he also knows that so far, the the tactics and the shape and the ideas he's put in place have worked incredibly well. Like I think the way that, like I say, they've been transformed over the course of a relatively short period of time, because we saw it quite early on this season, has been really, really impressive. Yes, there's still a long way to go. 10 games to go in the league, a Copa del Rey semi-final second leg, Champions League as well. Lots of things could go wrong for Barca. Of course they could between now and the end of the season. But right now, I think they're in about as good a place as they could possibly expect to be.
Alex, tell us the latest with Marc Casado, if there have been any updates on his injury and the impact that's going to have on Barcelona.
Yeah, he's going to be out for a couple of months. There was a question, I think, about whether he was going to undergo surgery or whether it was going to be a more conservative treatment. In the end, they've opted for the more conservative option. So at the moment, it doesn't look like he'll be undergoing surgery, but he does require treatment. And like I say, it's going to be a couple of months out of action. It's a blow for them. Of course it is. But you have to say, in the last few weeks, whereas early in the season, he was a pretty much guaranteed starter and very, very impressive at the base of the midfield, an important part of the team. He hasn't been a guaranteed starter in the last few weeks. We've seen the likes of Frenkie de Jong, who missed out at the weekend, come in, who's a divisive player sometimes from fans, but I think Flick likes him a lot. And so Casado hasn't always been in the starting 11 in the last few weeks. So yes, it's, like I say, it's a blow for Barca, but he's maybe not as important right now as he was earlier on in the season.
Atleti are third favourites as it stands right now. Obviously, they've got that Copa del Rey game coming up with Barcelona, but they don't need to worry about the Champions League anymore. And when you actually look at their run in La Liga, most of the games that they've got left for the rest of this season are games that they should win. So, Craig, what chances are we giving them?
You say that, but since the winter break, they've lost to Leganés and Getafe, amongst others. So, you know, you can basically just chuck this out, because they've already shown us that in games where you think, right, that shouldn't be a problem, then it has been. So on paper, yes, but you've still got to go out and get the job done. And unfortunately, those two games in particular, those two winnable games, would have seen them. I can't remember the points difference they have at the moment to the top, but they'd have been top. Right, so the Leganés and Getafe game, they'd have been top. Now, Barca can argue and Real Madrid could argue, well, we dropped points there and we dropped points there. But there's no getting away from it. Those were games where, you know, most of us sat here and went, right, there's a three-pointer for Atleti, there's a three-pointer. So sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. I think the odds are pretty spot on. I think at the moment, Barca look as if they're going to go on and win the title. But there's a good few hurdles to get over. And again, I say it, nobody really saw the loss of form coming going into the winter break, but it happened, and it kind of spiralled quite quickly for them. So that kind of thing can turn, particularly when the pressure gets cranked up. And obviously, May 11th is the Clásico at the Montjuic, so home advantage for them there. But again, what position are we going to be in going into that? Is it going to be like a 2 or 3 points, or is somebody already going to be 5 or 6 points ahead? We just don't know.
Alex, you've been nodding along there with what Craig had to say about Atleti in these upcoming games.
Yeah, I've got to say, I felt really quite sorry for them at the weekend, because I thought they played very well. You know, certainly for about 70 minutes. Okay, they then conceded 4 goals. But I thought for most of the game, I thought they played really well and much better than I expected them to, given that it was coming off the back of being knocked out of the Champions League and the way that happened against Real Madrid. Another game in which I actually think they played really quite well. So I think I've been relatively impressed with them. But yeah, the results haven't been there. And like Craig said, they've had these slip-ups, especially the one against Getafe fairly recently. That was, you know, that's not a result that you can afford to get away with in a title race. I don't think they're out of it completely. I do think the Copa del Rey semi-final second leg against Barcelona is important, because I think getting knocked out of the cup as well, on top of the Champions League, on top of this result, that might be too much for them psychologically. But I don't think we can rule them out completely, because overall, like I say, I think they have been playing really well. Julian Alvarez has been great, Sorloth off the bench. Simeone's got a strong squad. And like I say, I think they've been doing pretty well. But when it's come to the crunch, admittedly, in the last week, with a bit of bad luck in that penalty shootout, with a very, very strange game, the way it played out in the last 20 minutes in La Liga, yeah, they haven't got over the line.
They did put that great run together, though, at the start, well, just after a slow start to the season. Yeah. Was it 15 games unbeaten, or 15 wins? I can't remember, but it was a great streak. They started the season relatively slowly, if memory serves me right. It seems like a long time ago now. And you were thinking, because we talked about the squad before the season started and said, look, the squad is really beefy. almost two starting 11s. So he had a lot to pick from. He made some big signings, you know, particularly Julian Alvarez, signed Conor Gallagher, who's sort of been in and out. And then they started the season a little bit, I think, poorly. And then they got this momentum and came like a train. If they can somehow harness that again and finish the season like that, they're going to be close. The big question again is, there's all these questions, but the big question again, can they put that run together that they did midway through that first half of the season that's going to propel them back right into the middle of this title race?
What they need need to happen is what happened just after the start of the season when everybody wrote them off. Because basically we'd written them off. We were sitting talking about, is it going to be Barca, is it going to be Real Madrid? And so on the quiet, they managed to get themselves up, and all of a sudden, they're a point behind. Oh, they've got an opportunity. But when the question was asked, they failed to deliver. And I don't think defensively they're as good as Atletico Madrid teams of the past. And I think that's as big a problem as any, because you can't rely on them right now, and you certainly can't rely on a team who only got to the top of the tree nearly because everybody had forgotten about them.
It's not a coincidence, I don't think, that their slow start to the season, Atleti, in comparison to others, coincided with Julian Alvarez taking a little bit of time, unsurprisingly, to fit in. Was on the bench quite a few times, got substituted off quite a few times, was partnered with Soloth, was partnered with Griezmann, and it was like, how's this going to work? And it's no surprise that once they worked it out, the Griezmann sort of Alvarez, and as Alex mentioned, Soloth, unfortunately for him, it's been coming off the bench for the most part. Once they figured out the balance and the understanding, and Alvarez and Griezmann, but particularly Alvarez, really hit form, then they were able to go in this great run. As long as if Griezmann stays fit and Alvarez stays fit, they possibly could do that. They're just in a position at the moment that makes it difficult because they're sort of one or two slip-ups away from taking themselves completely out of it. They don't really, because of those results, particularly the Getafe one recently, it means there's less room for error, and that's a much more difficult position to be in.
Yeah, the only question marks came in because he had that slightly slow start, but the goal scoring it's always been there, but it's steadily improved. The all-round performances have steadily improved as well. And I think now we're looking at pretty much the season that we expected him to have. Now, as always at Real Madrid, and as he has said time and time again, it's about trophies. It's not about goals. He said a couple of times now, he said the goals for him don't matter unless they're accompanied by trophies. And so that's what Real Madrid's all about. Let's see what happens in the Champions League, which is the big one, and the League and the Copa del Rey. Because talk about Barca going for a treble. Real Madrid, it's there for them as well, potentially. So no, I think right now his season can be graded as good, and it will become very good or even great only if those goals are accompanied by trophies.
I don't wish to burst his bubble.
Okay.
I don't wish to burst Mbappe's bubble.
You going to?
But I don't think he is the most important player.
At Real Madrid.
I think Courtois is the most important player. They could win games without Mbappe right now, but they can't win games without Courtois. And as much as he's caught up, because what he's done in the last few months is he's caught up from that bad start, which is fantastic. But I don't think he's the most important player. Not right now.
I was sat here. Two of us were busting to get in, and I was just about to say you could look at the other end.
Right.
And it's not fancy and it's not flash, but if you take the Villarreal game for an example, the back four was makeshift at best. What was it? Tchouaméni, Asensio, was it Vasquez at the weekend? It wasn't Valverde, it was Lucas Vasquez at right back, and I think it might have been Fran Garcia at left back. So it was the makeshift back four. And away from home, at the fifth best team at the moment in La Liga, they got peppered in the first 15 minutes before those two goals from Kylian Mbappe. And so it took, another... And there was no world-class saves, but they were all solid saves that he made. But it takes having arguably the best keeper in the world, well, certainly in the top three, behind this makeshift defence, who are going to cough up some opportunities to keep you in the game, as Stevie said, to allow you to go and win it. And that is hugely important. And, the goals, of course the goals are important and they're flashy and they make the headlines. But when you've got somebody like that at the other end, Courtois, who can, a bit like Alisson did in Paris, you just can't You can't buy that, because Liverpool that night in Paris should have been battered. They should have went back to Liverpool on the plane, 4-0 down, maybe even 5. That's the difference a real top goalkeeper can make. So I'm with him. I think the other end is, at the moment, the most important position for Real Madrid.
So let me come back to both parties. Outfield players then, is he their most important right now?
Well, no, because if...
No, this is a silly... I really think this is a silly argument, because... or a silly debate, and I'll tell you why.
They can win without him, right?
You can't have one player. You can't just single out one player, right? There is, and Alex touched on it there when he talked about, it's not about goals, and according to Mbappe, it's about trophies. You can't win trophies with just one player. It takes a team effort, and everybody has an important role to play. So, is he the most important? Well, he's maybe the most important player, arguably, with Vinicius Junior in the front line, but he's certainly not the most important when it comes to making tackles and playing passes. He's not the most important when it comes to winning headers or making saves. So, my point is it's not going to take one person. It's like Barcelona. Lamine Yamal's not going to take them over the line on his own. Neither's Rafinha, neither's Lewandowski. It's going to be a team effort, and that's how it is. He may grab the headlines at the end of the season, Kylian Mbappe, but the most important thing is that all the facets of the team are operating properly.
Yes, and we just hope that Real Madrid are given the rest that Carlo Ancelotti has asked for, 72 hours between games. Javier Tebas has come back at this. It was fun to hear what the guys had to say about it at the weekend. Javier Tebas has said since European competitions began on Thursdays more than 14 years ago, clubs from all over Europe, including Spanish ones, have been playing on Sundays without 72 hours having passed. Now, yes, we have heard from the boys on this, Alex. It doesn't mean we don't want to again, but let me get your thoughts on this, because we're seeing this drama here between club and league on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true what Tebas says, in the sense that the clubs that suffer most from this are the clubs that play in the Europa League, in the Conference League in Spain this season. That's been Real Sociedad, Athletic Club, Betis, because of the way that the timings play out, playing on a Thursday night, and then you have to play on a Sunday or a Monday, I guess. They are consistently getting fewer than 72 hours rest. I think there's a lot of support for the Real Madrid's position that players aren't getting enough rest, that players are overworked, there are too many games in too many competitions, and this is having a detrimental effect on players' health and on performance as well, and that the spectacle is suffering as a result. I think everyone is pretty much united on that. The question is this approach from Madrid, which is coming out and sort of taking a step further and saying, we are not going to play a game in these circumstances again, taking quite a belligerent stance, albeit on a point of principle, and that some people might question. And the fact that, as I say, they're not the only ones. There are a number of teams who suffer in this way. And we wait to see what happens the next time that Madrid are in this position. They've got this short gap coming up between the Leganés game in La Liga and the Copa del Rey semi-final second leg that theoretically, unless kickoff times change, will be under 72 hours. So let's see if they stick to their guns on this. But I think there's pretty much universal agreement among clubs and among players and among coaches that the point of principle is correct. The question is how best to deal with it. But look, people have been complaining about this. Players have been complaining about this. Players' unions have complained about this for years, and nothing has happened. The situation hasn't got better. It's got worse. So yeah, maybe you can make the case that more radical action is required to force a change.
I've always been an advocate of there's just too many of supporting the position that, with this ludicrous Club World Cup and other stuff, and increasing, European Championship teams and increasing teams at World Cups, making more games, blah, blah, blah. I've got an issue with that. I don't ever remember, ever remember discussing the amount of hours between a game on a weekend and a game in midweek. Do you? Never. I don't ever remember anybody in the dressing room ever. I don't remember a dressing room at any of the clubs I played, and most of them were international footballers, so they were travelling around. They weren't getting much rest either. But I don't ever remember in 10 plus years a conversation where somebody went, "We've got 68 hours to the next game." Yeah. I just think it is. I think it has been embedded now in the minds of managers, players, and I think where it's coming from is is sports science. Sports science is trying to tell players, rightly or wrongly, that, or tell coaches and players that they need X amount of rest to be at their peak condition. That's probably correct. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world that is driven by TV networks, TV contracts, TV slots, that everybody wants their piece of the pie. And that's very difficult. I get the crux of this argument. The crux of this argument, I think, isn't so much the 72 hours. The crux of it, for me, was they played on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and their biggest rivals played on a Tuesday and a Sunday. I think that's where this stems from.
It suited them. Do you know, I'd be more inclined to listen and back Real Madrid up if they had turned round and said, we're going to look after our players, and so we're not going to take part in the Club World Cup. I would have been more impressed if they'd fought against that. Not just them, but all the other clubs. And I mean really fight against it by just saying, we are not playing. Because if we think that teams are tired and teams have got injuries, just you wait till the start of next season after this Club World Cup, it's going to be ridiculous. We're going to be complaining. But of course, Real Madrid, they're only interested in getting the money from it and winning the tournament so they can stick it on their wall, along with the other 1,000 that they've got. So I would be more impressed if they turned around and said, we're interested in our players, we're not playing in the Club World Cup. That would have made some sense to me.
Yeah, the proposed date for that make-up match, as mentioned, Alex, between Barcelona and Osasuna is the Thursday after the international break comes to an end. That's a week on Thursday, March 27th. Obviously, players like Rafinha will be coming back from their international duty with very, very little rest. How has this proposed rescheduling gone down in Spain?
Not well, from a Barcelona point of view, and Barcelona are appealing this as they have the right to do. How this process works, it's always a bit convoluted, these scheduling issues, but this is the judge who reports to the federation, sets this date, and then the clubs have the chance to appeal. And of course, then it's also La Liga who actually set the kickoff times here in Spain. So this was always going to happen. Barcelona were never going to be happen, as you say, with some of those international players coming back with very little rest. Those players like Araujo for Uruguay, like Rafinha for Brazil, and then potentially being involved or not being able to be involved for Barcelona. There's also the question of then the subsequent league fixtures after the Thursday, that following weekend, might have to be mixed up because Barca's opponents, Osasuna, due to play originally the very next day. Of course, that's not going to happen. So that game has to be changed. What's the knock-on effect in terms of other games having to be changed? So potentially that whole weekend of fixtures, or a number of them, will be moved around. And so it's absolutely not a sure thing that game will be played on that date. Like I say, Barcelona are appealing it. They wanted to play it much later in the season. They wanted to play it in May, I think, to make it the penultimate game. Of course, there's big implications there as well, and questions there about, can you have a title race where you've got one of the contenders having a game in hand right up until the penultimate game? Their rivals wouldn't be happy about that either. So there's no ideal solution because, as we say, the calendar is so congested.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Thank you so much, Alex. We look forward to hearing from you again on La Liga. We're obviously taking a short pause for the international break, but when La Liga does return, these are all the games that you can enjoy from March 28th onwards, as we see Real Madrid up against Leganés, Atleti away to Espanyol, and Barcelona taking on Girona. All of the games available on ESPN+, as are our Copa del Rey games as well. Real Madrid against Real Sociedad, and what will we get in this second leg between Atleti and Barcelona? Find out right here on ESPN+. Let's continue with the focus on Barcelona, but on the Champions League now, because obviously they're favourites to win the competitions that they are in, and Lamine Yamal is very confident as well. He said, we are favourites to win the Champions League now that Liverpool are out of the competition. We are not afraid of any team. We are the team that does the most damage to Real Madrid and vice versa. And we're not the same as 1 year ago against PSG. Frank Leboeuf is joining us now to talk more about this, and it is obviously that time of the year in the United States when it's the NCAA basketball tournaments, and we're all about the brackets. And so that's what
I've never done a bracket in the NCAA.
Okay, maybe you guys haven't, but you must have seen everybody around you.
No, never seen it. I've never met anybody doing a bracket.
Well, you need to go.
I've managed 11 years without doing a bracket.
You might get roped into some brackets.
Nope.
Yeah, Dan Thomas is definitely all in on this kind of stuff. But we're talking about Barcelona here being favourites to win the Champions League. That's the case that it is right now. That's what Lamine Yamal is saying right now. Let's get Frank Leboeuf's bracket, shall we? OK, Frank, here we go. This is how the quarterfinals are shaping up. Tell us who's in the semis.
So Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain. And in the final, I see Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain. And the winner will be the Paris Saint-Germain because the game is going to be held in Munich, where Chelsea won in 2013 their first Champions League trophy. So I believe that it can happen to Paris Saint-Germain, the same story. I don't agree with Lamine Yamal. I mean, he didn't beat Liverpool. Paris Saint-Germain did it. Have been better for the 2 games and put the best team in Europe out of the competition. So therefore, Paris Saint-Germain is a favorite for me, and it's funny that he names Paris Saint-Germain and say we are better than 1 year ago against Paris Saint-Germain. But Paris Saint-Germain are better than 1 year ago, and we can see the difference. And they've been able to beat Liverpool and to be better for the 2 legs. So clearly, for me, Paris Saint-Germain is the favorite of the competition.
So the first ever, you get to see that often on ESPN.
What's that?
That Craig has put together a bracket.
No, I've done brackets on football. I've got no interest in the NCAA
Nothing on
or any other.
basketball. OK, well, thank you for putting one together here on the Champions League. Talk us through.
I've gone the opposite way. I've gone Barcelona and I've gone Inter because I think Bayern have the deficiencies. I think, and I've gone Real Madrid, PSG, which I don't think is controversial. And then I've gone for a Real Madrid Inter final, actually. Because for all the skill set Barcelona have, Inter are one of them. Stevie talked about Atleti not being the defensive team they once were, but Inter are. They're as good defensively as they were last year and the year before. They just seem to get better in that respect. And although Real Madrid haven't been great, the only reason I put them in the final is because they just seem to more often than not get the job done. Like, I can't tell you anything else. It's nothing. I don't think they're in a brilliant form. I think they have obviously some injury issues, but a combination of Ancelotti and their experience. So I have them in the final, and I've always had a little feeling for Inter, who now look as if they're going to win Serie A. They're at the top. They're starting to hit a bit of form. They're just they're kind of like Atleti, where a few years ago you really didn't want to play them, but they got a little bit more in midfield and going forward. But again, I've still got Real Madrid to win the whole damn thing.
All right, Stevie's turn to do a football bracket. Don't worry, not a basketball bracket.
Oh, I can do both.
Oh, you can do both? Oh, you get involved then, Stevie. Here we go then, Stevie.
Have I got angry about a basketball bracket?
You know, I've got Barcelona. It's funny, just a side note here. After the game at the weekend, when Yamal was talking to Dan and Luis and said, I was thinking, my goodness, this kid's only 17-year-old. How mature is he? And he took everything in his stride and being pulled after the game.
Why Inter over...
And then he comes out and starts talking about they're the favourites. It just blew all the maturity out the water.
Why have you gone for Inter over Bayern?
For the same reason that basically you did, because I really don't trust Bayern defensively. Yes, they were good over the 2 legs against Leverkusen, but Inter can beat them whichever way they want. If they want to make it a game of football, we can beat them, and if they want to tough it out, they can beat them as well. So that's why I've gone Inter. The Real Madrid one, I'm with you, by the way. I have nothing to give you why Real Madrid are going to get through, because you just can't back against them in the Champions League, and they're going to beat PSG as well.
So you got a Classical final?
I've got a Classical final. You can't back against Real Madrid. You just can't. You can't. Even
with what Barcelona have done to them this season?
No, even when you thought they were dead and buried against Man City 2 or 3 years ago, they got battered. They got 2-0 down at the Bernabeu in the night. It was when Rodrigo come off the bench, I think. They were absolutely mauled in terms of football. That was when City were in their pomp.
Aye.
And they just had this wherewithal to hang in there and then just do something special out of nothing.
They got outplayed in the final by Liverpool as well, and they won that. I mean, you just can't back against them.
Go on for it.
But I'm just going back to just to go back to Stevie's final then. So you're saying Real Madrid are going to win that final?
Yes. Because you can't back against them. How can you?
Maybe because of what you've seen when they face Barcelona this season.
But this is not the first time we've seen this. In previous season, we've just been talking about Man City and Liverpool and other games where they were just dead and buried, and then from nowhere they turn around and score a goal to either go to extra time or win the game or whatever it is. Whatever's needed at the time, regardless, they come up with it. That's why.
Go on, Frank.
Yeah, I think it's only fair to see that bracket from Stevie. It's predictable, but it's what people see overall, and Barcelona and Real Madrid maybe deserve, according to what we have seen, because of the history of football, they deserve to be in the final. And Real Madrid, because of the amount of final that they won, yeah, it's so predictable that they're going to win. But I believe in football there are some surprises, and we just saw big surprises with Liverpool. And we saw another surprise with Bayern Munich. Who thought Bayern Munich could beat twice Leverkusen? Everybody buried them before, and I was one of them. I never thought that they could do that. So I want to believe that because there is a sense of inconsistency from every club in Europe right now, in every competition, that we're going to see surprises. It's why it might be the year of Paris Saint-Germain. It's unexpected, but it's possible. And why not Inter? It's true. But Bayern Munich made a statement. Beating Leverkusen twice, it's a hell of a statement for me.
Okay.
Yeah, but Leverkusen going forward, you know, like the game that you were at in Germany, didn't even play a striker. Yeah. You know, and that they bossed the game. It's going to be a different scenario for them than Leverkusen. Look, you could easily put up an argument for PSG going all the way. Easily. As long as they could harness the type of performances they put in 2 games against Liverpool, you could say, well, I could see them beating Real Madrid. I could. If they played that way, you could make that argument. And if the brackets pan out any of those ways, they should be great games. You could make an argument for Bayern Munich. Of course you could. You can make an argument for PSG and so forth and so forth. But if PSG play in that manner, that game, if it goes that way against Real Madrid, those 2 games would be something else.
We want to talk about Liverpool. It's the first time you two have been on together since Liverpool lost in the final to Newcastle. There was a feeling, and obviously it is recent, Craig, that this has happened. And I know Frank echoed this sentiment as well, that it feels like a disappointment for you guys with this happening.
Well, I said that yesterday.
Yes.
It almost feels, and it's not going to be if you win a league title, that it is never disappointing. But it just feels, and maybe this will change. He can answer it better from a Liverpool perspective. Maybe it'll change when it gets a little bit closer to them actually winning it. But it just feels that it's gone so flat at the moment that it kind of is. It feels a bit disappointing. I mean, it won't be when they lift the trophy at the end. That's kind of how it feels to me right now.
They've hit a wall. They've basically hit a wall. There was absolutely no response against Newcastle because they didn't have it in them. I mean, nothing. Zero. I mean, Salah hardly had a touch. And then when he did, he was getting around his throat from kick-outs from Kelleher. I mean, just everything. Just Liverpool didn't have it in them in order to respond to the pressure and that extra sharpness that Newcastle had. Unfortunately, for Liverpool, they've got some free weeks coming up, which is going to be huge. And in order for them to get enough juice back, that they will win the games that are coming up, that under normal circumstances they would.
How deflated, this sounds strange, how deflated do you think? Because a month ago, going into that training ground, we've all been through good and bad times, and when you're flying, you can't wait to get in the morning for the banter and to get out in the training field, and then you're looking forward to the next game. It almost feels like they'll be going in with their heads down a little bit because and they've got a Premier League title that they're probably going to win, but it almost feels that the place will be a little deflated.
You know what it's like. You need every team's got a couple of guys in it who are the silly ones, the stupid ones, the funny ones. These people need to come to the fore. But more,
the Seven Dwarfs.
But more importantly, the staff and the manager have to give themselves a shake and change things and mix training up and get people enjoying themselves and just just try and lighten the atmosphere. Because it feels like a big heavy cloud's hanging over the lot of them. So you've got to move the cloud. And there's one thing in football, you cannot feel sorry for yourself. And the manager and his staff, absolutely. A huge part of getting rid of that cloud is going to be down to them, the way that they come into training and get the players out of the funk that they'll probably will be in, considering.
I like the... I mean, you can sort of pick apart some of the stuff he did at the weekend, particularly the Dan Burn stuff. We talked about it a lot yesterday. But out with that, I don't know if you've seen the video, but I really like what Arne Slot did at the end. He waited, when they were going up to get their medals, and I think Van Dijk was there as well, to be fair, as the captain. They waited in every Newcastle player to give them, you know, shake a hand or give them a hug as they went past. And I like that because it wasn't it was a realisation, I think, that they'd been outrun, outplayed and outscored, obviously, in that game, and they didn't have their best. But at least there was some class from a manager who waited for all those players and understood, I think, what it meant to them before they went up the stairs. I thought that was a nice touch.
It was definitely a touch of class. Unfortunately, I missed it because my television was turned off.
At least it's still intact.
As soon as the whistle went.
What happened? What, did you kick it?
No, I didn't need to kick it. I had the thing right in my hand.
Oh, you
See you later.
right.
Had enough.
So we've got to talk about Mo Salah. Obviously, we talked about this yesterday, and that in these recent big high-profile games for Liverpool, he hasn't made the impact, especially this season, that you would have expected of him, given what we've seen from him this season. We're looking at here his stats against PSG and against Newcastle. And where we've talked earlier in the season about when he's been absolutely flying and dominating and hitting all the figures,
I'm going to say
his
something.
contract.
I'm going to say something now that I know basically nothing about. Do you know what I'm going to say?
You're going to talk about the fact he's going through Ramadan.
Yes.
Right.
Which I know. I apologise. I just got on and do my thing. I have no idea what it involves. Got fair enough a little bit, but I have no idea how it affects individuals, right? And all that blah 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 kind of stuff. I don't know. So I don't know if that has an effect on energy levels or anything like, or it's anything to do with this.
It does.
So I can't answer that question, but he certainly has looked quite a percentage down on the sharpness. And he's not the only player, obviously. There's a bunch of players that will be doing the same thing around the world. But certainly him being one of the big stars at a really important time of the season for Liverpool, whether it is that it's had an effect, whether it's the contract that's had an effect, or whether it's just he's lost form and ran out of steam. I don't have the answer, but I think it's a valid sort of conversation to, has it affected him?
Absolutely, I'd forgotten about that.
And a valid reason for why we're...
No, mate, I'm not, by the way, I'm not
No,
making an excuse for anybody.
Well, it is an excuse.
I just don't know what that...
Well, you also know what you need as fuel for a game, don't you? So you know that if you...
You don't want to know what his fuel and my fuel was.
Oh, I've seen it, yeah.
Well, I had a couple of guys at the Revs who clearly, when they were going through it, couldn't play 90 minutes. They couldn't last.
Yeah, of course.
And they were the same. And they were the same in training. They were bending over, holding their knees in training, and I'd completely forgotten about that. So yeah, that's a great point. But I think the major point though is that in the great season he's had so far, Liverpool have got him the ball consistently, time and time again, getting him one-on-one with his defender, having him in a position where he can go at people and get in the box and get his shots, and all of these things, which has disappeared from the Liverpool team in the last, 2-3 weeks. So I think that's the biggest problem. But certainly that point is huge as well.
Yeah, and you agree with that, Frank?
I do agree. I mean, it's so hard to be fit and to be at the top of the top for a season. If on top of it, on the daylight, you're not able to drink or to eat, it's impossible to cope with. So I completely understand Salah's performances, and I will put that on that. And after, I get on the global analysis of what happened to Liverpool. Remember, they changed the coach. We thought it's going to be a hard time, except for me because I put them finishing first. But really, being serious, you don't expect them at the beginning of the season being able to think that they can get the quadruple. They aim the Premier League. They fought so hard to get the Premier League title. And then they get like 11, 12 points ahead of Arsenal. And they think it's over, that they're going to get it. So subconsciously, you relax. And it's what we see with Paris Saint-Germain and Newcastle. You're not there anymore. You know that you're going to get the biggest title that you think you should get. That's the most important one, according to Stevie and all Liverpool fans. It's better to win the Premier League than the Champions League. So when you get it, when you think it's over, that Arsenal can go back, you drop your stamina, your ambition, everything, and subconsciously, you open up a little bit. And you're not a machine anymore. And the bad result comes up. It's why I think they lost their mojo, because they know that they're going to get the Premier League. It's only human, it's understandable, it's disappointing because I thought they could get more, but it's not that bad from a first season.
What to make of this quote by US men's national team coach Mauricio Pochettino? He says, I think we can dominate soccer, football, maybe in 10 or 15 years' time, or maybe less, because in 5 or 10 years, for sure we can be number one in the world. It could be. Frank Leboeuf is still with us, but why are you laughing, Stevie?
Well, because I don't think Frank or Craig were in the country. The last time somebody turned round and made a statement like that was around 2000, where they said by 2020 the US are going to win the World Cup. And so I'm laughing because here we go, we can hear it again. Really? Come on.
It's not a simplistic thing about population and, not suggesting it, but population and talent levels don't go hand in hand. Just because you have a big country, a lot of people, you know, if that was the case, China would be winning everything in these sports. You look at Croatia, I think 4.5 million.
Uruguay as well, yeah.
Uruguay and South America. You look at Croatia, who have been to World Cup finals and, you know, and produced some of the greatest players, or some of the great players in recent years. You know, ever since Croatia, and think about that region, Yugoslavia, that all gets split up, the talent levels there. These countries are small now. As I say, less than 5 million, they're still producing some of these great players. I think he's just trying to appease. I think unless you've got, I think unless you're in cuckoo land, you're, which I have to say, some of them that do follow the US men's national team are in cuckoo land and beyond. I think most of them, the sensible ones, know that that's not going to be the case. Now they have good players. There is no doubt about that. You know, Pulisic is a good player. Tyler Adams is a good player. You know, McKennie. They have. Who's the lad that's in Holland now up front? Keep forgetting.
Pepe.
There's a bunch of them. They are, honestly. Hadji Wright playing at Coventry. There's a bunch of them. They have a good talent pool of good players, but they don't have, right. And I'm going to say this, we were talking to one of the Beto, the producer from Football Americas, yesterday about this. A discussion about maybe Pochettino has mentioned world class. They don't have world class players. Christian Pulisic is not a world class player. He's a good player. Right. You're not on the bench at Dortmund and Chelsea and playing for Milan, 7th in Serie A, if you're a world-class player. World-class players are the Mbappes, the Vinicius Juniors, the Mo Salahs, the Kevin De Bruynes, and before he's sort of fallen off a bit of a cliff, all the Erling Haaland, all these players. So they have good players. And that's fine. But the good players are only going to take you so far. So unless they can produce in 5 or 10 years 6 or 7 world-class players, which is probably not going to happen, then you're not going to achieve these goals. So they're in a good position, I would say, in terms of their talent pool. They're relatively young. Most of them are playing at a good standard of football, and they are, some of them, very good footballers. I mean, I do like Tyler Adams at Bournemouth. I've got to say that. I think he's a big part of why Bournemouth are playing well. But I think Mr. Pochettino there is stretching at quite some distance. And this is the problem.
Easing.
So a lot of people here who are casual soccer fans, who want to be educated a bit more because they maybe brought up in different sports and they're getting into it, they'll read this kind of stuff and I think they won't understand. Most of them will, but some won't. They believe it And then that's where the expectation comes. Well, he said in 10 years' time. So we're not doing well. When actually you might be doing probably about where you should be. And I think sometimes when you just chuck these things out, then people then get carried away a little bit or a lot. And then when it doesn't happen, it's a huge disappointment when in fact, really, this is where you are. So I would be quite happy if I was the US in terms of the players I've got. But they're not winning. They're not going to be number one in the world anytime soon, and they're not winning a World Cup.
Surprised at him saying that as well, because it doesn't do him any good either. Especially with his experience, it doesn't help him. It was just appeasing whoever was talking to him. That's all.
Frank?
Well, you know what? I think there are two issues, and I agree with the guys. Culture-wise, it's not part of their culture. I mean, the American population takes care of. Loves baseball, American football, basketball, but football, soccer is not still there. And then I think they took it the wrong way. Look at the most successful player, and I will say 90% of the most professional players around the world. They are people coming from a poor social level. And it's not the case in America. They didn't start like that. So they are late in the process of getting the people who are suffering. In football, you need to suffer. It's how it works with our culture. Rich people have a hard time to become football player. That's a statement. And you talk about Rafinha, you talk about Vinicius Junior, you talk about Mbappe. You know that the most productive area in the world for young players in north of Paris, where Mbappe comes from, where Pogba comes from, and most players come from, and Brazil, favelas. Doesn't come from Beverly Hills or Manhattan. It doesn't work that way. It works the other way. And it's why it's going to be, for me, hard for them to change the process and to go there to pick up the best player, the player who are very hungry. That's the recipe of the success for me.
To be fair, there is a culture difference. And it's not a bad thing, because here in the United States, there is, in all sports, and this is not a bad trait to have, actually, there is a culture of shooting for the stars and wanting to be the best. And that's all right. That's kind of the culture here. It's like, we can do it. Whereas the culture we come from, if the team aren't very good, our culture is, they've got absolutely no chance.
I knew it.
What's the point turning up? They're absolutely garbage. It's a different mindset. And the mindset here in the States, with certainly in the sort of 11 or 12 years I've been here, is that they want to get better, which is great, and they always aim high. The trouble is when you aim high all the time and it doesn't happen, the sort of soul-searching and disappointment is much greater and much deeper.
Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. If Stevie and Craig are speechless for the start of the show, because they've seen some amazing top goals.
Talking about the top 10 goals, didn't our late, great friend and colleague Paul Mariner used to pick the goals at one point?
He did.
And we used to, Paul, bless him.
We used to wind him up.
We used to absolutely.
Oh,
so he'd pick these goals and he was all like G'd up, and then he used to get hammered.
Yeah, but before it as well, we'd be doing it. So we'd be sat at the desk and he'd be sat beside me doing it. And just every now and again I'd go, you can't put that on. And he'd be like, he's so serious. You think so? I went, you need to go and find another one. And he'd go all the way down the stairs to the boys down the stairs and go, right, we need to get rid of that. We need to find another one. He took it so seriously.
Aww.
Honestly, God.
Where's that level of professionalism now, eh? Picking the top 10 goals
Down
from
the
the
pan.
panel.
It's gone.
Frank Leboeuf is with
Broadcast
us.
standards have slipped.
We're going to read out the first two questions back to back.
Okay, well that's good. That's going to save time.
Craig, give me one reason why you don't like Barcelona. You are always hating. Do you guys get paid extra for hating on Real Madrid, or do you guys do it for free?
People are weird, aren't they?
We don't do it for free. I know that.
People are weird, aren't they? There's a saying in Scotland, nothing funnier than folks. Don't know if it's a saying in England.
That's the funniest folk, yeah.
Funniest folk. And, you know, paranoia in the game has never been higher. And if you criticise or look at what you analyse rather than criticise, one of the things with Barcelona, and I think it grates a lot of their punters, is we sort of analyse this back four and this high line. So I think that's valid. And I'm not quite sure where the Real Madrid angle is. Maybe it's Mbappe, or I don't know where the hatred for. I get the Barca fans are maybe a little. Why are they questioning the back four? We're top of the league. Well, it's a job to sort of question it. Will it come unstuck at the end of the season? Will it cost them in some big games? Hasn't so far. Real Madrid, I don't know. Where's Atletico?
I think I did see some of the criticism coming from the people who believe there's hate on Real Madrid after what happened in the Champions League penalty shootout, that perhaps you guys didn't take the side that they might have liked you to take.
Well, the big story in that shootout was Julian Alvarez and that controversy and that crazy, stupid rule, and the fact that when we went to air, and we literally went to air that day, was it you?
Yeah, it was.
Was it you and I it was on?
Yeah, me, you and Ali.
And Ali. We literally went to air as soon as the last penalty went in. And everybody was still scratching around, including UEFA and the host broadcaster, to get a definitive on the touch on the ball. That's how ridiculous it was. Now, obviously there's some sort of proof there's been a touch, but that was the big talking point. So that's obviously what and people don't understand. You're going to go to air discussing the biggest talking point of the day, and the biggest talking point wasn't the Real Madrid win, it was the controversial way that happened.
And I tell you what, I've just had Barcelona playing Real Madrid in the final of the Champions League. That's how much we hate them.
Yes,
well I had them going out. So I always
I didn't put them.
Frank didn't put a single La Liga team in there.
I only semi-hate them.
Who did you have in the final?
Inter.
Yeah, I think I hate La Liga. That you can. It's going to be a statement now. No, I think it's really ridiculous because we are completely neutral. We don't care. We don't care about any team in the world. Even if when Chelsea is bad, we say it. Craig says it as well. We played for them. So it's not that we hate anybody. We don't give the stuff, like Craig Burley says, about any team. We just do our job. We are professional people. We have to say what we know. And we know because we've been players. We know, and we say it in a neutral point of view. So stop thinking that we hate your club because we say one criticism. Chill out, guys.
Can I throw a couldn't give a stuff in again?
Yeah.
Because Frank's thrown a couldn't give a stuff in for me. And I really like another couldn't give a stuff. Because I actually couldn't give a stuff if there was 500 questions come in about why I hate Barcelona, why I hate Real Madrid. I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less if you think I hate them or you think I like them. And I'm pretty sure most of the guys are the same. I think people have to understand. It's like, I don't leave this studio worried about what somebody thinks. Maybe the bosses, if there's a problem. But, I don't care. If somebody's upset with an opinion, and it's tough. You can't do this job worrying about whether somebody's going to be upset or not. You'd never do it.
Exactly. They hate all of your teams, and there's no bias there.
It's hate. It's just a bias. I always say biased against your team.
Yes. Craig, are you excited for the Nations League?
No, absolutely not. I can't wait for the schedule. I can't wait for the schedule to come out on Thursday. And I don't have any preconceived ideas, but I got my fingers crossed that the people that do our schedule are shining a nice light on me in the next few days, and I'm not going to be working a lot. I couldn't even tell you who's playing.
I have a nice sentence for that. We don't give the stuff about the Nation League.
Can I say, I shared some pictures the other day of my last 5 years at ESPN because it'd been my 5-year anniversary, and there's one of me and you covering the Nations League, and you look so happy on it with the Nations League badge.
Wow, there was a very good reason.
Now we know you're telling fibs.
Well, there's a very good reason for that.
It was paid twice.
I promise you, I've got the proof.
We had the rights to it, and I was trying to be semi-infused.
All right. Okay, for Frank.
I don't have the rights to it now, so I couldn't give a stuff.
Frank, how would you like to see Didier Deschamps set up France's front line with Dembele, Barcola, Mbappe, Kolo Muani and Doué showing great form and versatility in their respective clubs?
Okay, why without Weeby wants us to lose the game? I mean, if you play with 5 guys at front like that, you're not going to win any game, I tell you. We like the balance of a game, and yes, those players are amazing players, but you would have to make a choice. And
yeah, I think that's,
3 of them is already
kind
a lot.
of the question, Frank. Who are you picking,
Yeah,
given
who are
that
you
they
picking
are
out of
all
all those
amazing?
players?
Oh, who I'm picking? Oh, sorry. I'm picking Dembele, Mbappe, and Doué. Doué can play different positioning, and I think he's a great player. I'm so happy that Didier Deschamps picked him because he's somebody, he's something. So Dembele, Mbappe, Dembele on the right side, Mbappe on the left, and Doué at front.
This is Doué's first call-up, right?
Yeah,
Frank.
a little early.
It's his first call-up to the French squad?
Yes, it is.
He turned up.
It is.
It was a big no-no. You know what he did?
Tell me.
With Zaire Emery, he turned up late for his first call-up. Mr. Deschamps, yeah, I saw a clip today. He was late getting to the team hotel, I believe. And Didier Deschamps was very kind to him.
That could be a good sign, you know.
What? Getting there late?
Well, I was late for my very first game for Ayr United. And the manager just looked at me and went, well, that's a good start, isn't it? And I was like, no.
Unless I'm
so you never know. Could turn it all
It's
right.
nothing, not bad. But you know, these days managers are very
well.
stringent on, you know, we saw Hansi Flick this season, but I can't remember which player it was. Late for training, you're not playing. Late for a meeting, you're not playing. So, just saying, first squad, and he turned up late and blamed his mate.
Things you don't do, eh?
But guess what? Hey, he was late for Ayr United.
Yeah, exactly. And look what he went on to do. Okay, this is one of my favourite questions that I've seen in a while. It's very nice.
Oh.
Who's your all-time favourite player that would have played in the same position as you? Or did play in the same position as you?
Big.
Right.
Go, Frank.
Easy for me, Franz Beckenbauer. The Kaiser was all-time favorite player for sure, but a masterpiece. I tried to copy him, and I'm happy that I was able to do maybe 3% of what he did in his career, and the way he changed the football for defenders. Because he was a midfielder, don't forget at first, and he dropped after, but carry on trying to go forward, thinking a lot about how can you play high on the field. I mean, the guy was a masterpiece, and yeah, Franz Beckenbauer.
Nice, Frank.
Frank, you need to help me out here. I always forget.
There's a lot of players, eh?
I always forget this guy's name. He played right back for the French team with Platini and all of those guys. What was his name again, Frank?
Battiston, Amoros.
Amoros.
Battiston was half.
Amoros,
No,
left back.
Yeah, Amoros was fantastic.
Manuel Amoros, left back. Yeah.
Yeah, he was absolutely.
He was the best left back in the World Cup '82.
Yeah, he was frightening.
Yeah, great defender.
Could do everything, not just defending, going forward as well. Brilliant.
It's a bit hard to pick out the best midfielder in the world, isn't it? As ever played.
But who did you really like?
Well, I want to go back to the '82 World Cup because Dan always hates when I do that. But that's the first one. I think I was 10 years old, and I remember just Scotland were in it. They played Brazil. That was the tournament that Italy won. Marco Tardelli, Paolo Rossi hat-trick. Paolo Rossi hat-trick back from his doping ban, all that sort of stuff. Diego Maradona sent off and they lost it. And all that, I can tell you, used to watch it all the time. Socrates, or Socrates, whatever you want to say.
Yes!
Now, Brazil got knocked out by Italy, but him just watching him in that tournament, and there was all the Zico and Adair and all these, but Socrates was just, you know, he went on to play in the northeast of England.
He did. Played one game, didn't he?
Was it Gateshead?
That beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, but he was part of that Brazilian team. I mean, there's so many midfielders.
Yeah.
Do you remember Tostão? I'm going back to my generation. When I was a kid, Tostão, Rivellino. I mean...
Well, he was a striker. Tostão was a striker, no?
No.
But I do remember that French team you're talking about.
He was in the midfield with the team with Pele, Rivellino, all those guys, Carlos Alberto.
What about the players back then?
Right.
I'm not being funny. That World Cup, the '82, he mentioned Batista and Amorós, Platini was playing. Alan Giresse. Is it Giresse, Frank?
Giresse, yeah.
Giresse, Tigana.
Even Germany, Pierre Litbarski and all these guys. It was unbelievable. It's a trip down memory lane, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be going to watching reruns of the 1982 World Cup.